reading a press piece today about someone who has ended up in prison for abusing women, over 300 of them. And I just thought, and they go by a different name, but their real name, I was just looking for something, it came up on the feed as well. Their real name is in the indictment. So I thought I'd actually just look at their soul plan for their real name and just look at it at face value. No big spiritual interpretation, no intuitive insight added, which is what I do when I'm doing a reading. I just thought, let's just look at it in the cold light of day. We're going to very quickly go through the various aspects of the soul plan. So we always start with the worldly, which is things that you come into the world to learn, challenges that you overcome, getting to know yourself, etc. So, and I'm looking at the challenge, there are always potential attributes. So these are things you have the potential to be, do, have, etc. And there are possible challenges. And the reason it says potential and possible is not all of these will apply. So when I'm doing a soul plan reading, there'll be some things that really just do not resonate at all. And I will often say to clients, which of these? And they sometimes will laugh and say all of them. But oftentimes the things that stood out to me, I don't tell the client that. I'm just saying, I'm going to run you through this list, this overview. And of course, they've got a copy of the soul plan as well. So I will often say, highlight what resonates. And then I compare that to my notes and what I was picking up, and they're pretty much always the same. So it's about potential, it's about possibility. Just because it's in your soul plan doesn't mean it's going to happen, or you've experienced it, or you'll go through it, etc. So looking at the soul plan for this person who's, I believe, in prison now for the 300 rapes, let's see. So we've got magnetic and catalytic. Excellent networker, they most certainly were, had women and celebrities flocking to them. I'm looking at the worldly challenges of 7-7. This is about being a catalyst, drawing people in. And it says open-hearted. They were very much known for their love and spirituality, religion, etc. And actually, while I'm going through, see if you can guess who this is. Put a note in the comments or the chat if you can guess. So possible challenges: unintegrated, denial of shadow, mistrust, isolated, hermit, controlling, prone to fantasies, less foot issues, reticence to engage, non-participation. Now, with regards to this one, the piece about the controlling and even the hermit energy, because they were public facing, but behind the scenes, in the shadows, there were some really dark things going on. Now, for the 5-5, we've got that ethereal energy. So it says they were pioneering, intuitive, spiritually open, adventurous, assertive, articulate, visionary, creative. Now, in terms of what this person did in the world, it was extremely unique, very pioneering. They were, in terms of what they presented, they had almost like a direct hotline to God, etc., the spirit, and so it was very out there. It was really pushing the boundaries, a very creative, forward thinking, visionary way to help heal people, treat people of illnesses. Now, the challenge side, the dark side, no, I'm joking, but the challenge side, highly sensitive, too much so, ethereal, ungrounded, manipulative, misuse of intuition, difficulty fitting in, victim of abuse, right foot issues, about stepping forwards. Now, as I look at what this person was finally prosecuted for, what they were doing behind the scenes, behind the facade, it was extremely manipulative. And if they are even just intuitive, never mind having a connection to God, you can use that in ways that you manipulate people. And you can tap into their fears, you can pick up on what it is they might be thinking, feeling, etc., and use that to your advantage. Now, where it talks about the victim of abuse, given that he allegedly, it's been proven now, I don't need to say allegedly because this was a few years ago, where we now, I think it was about 5 years ago, the victim of abuse. I'm not sure if that ever came up in court. Were they themselves a victim of abuse? I don't know, but it's interesting just to see it in there. Now, we've got this worldly goals piece, and part of this is the ability to create and multiply, make money. And my God, what they were given an even bigger platform at one point, they must have been raking it in. So potential attributes of their worldly goals: positive, spiritual, compassionate, idealistic, counseling ability, healing ability, very loving. This is exactly the way that they presented, the way that they appeared in their heyday, when they had, you know, the media, the world, celebrities fawning over them. That could be their bio almost. Possible challenges: tough exterior, abrasive, abrupt, heart chakra blockage, self-indulgent, neglects others, self-destructive, untrusting, suspicious of others' motives. So I'm going to pick on a few things. Now, I have no idea. I'm presuming when you're raping someone, you're not pleasant about it. So I'm going to have to, you know, it's not good to assume things. I don't know. Have not read any of the court transcripts. I don't know if any of the court transcripts have ever been released. However, if you think about what they were imprisoned for, I would imagine that they weren't the most friendly. They're very self-indulgent. You're taking advantage of women who are already vulnerable. They're putting themselves in your care, and you're basically destroying the trust that they have placed in you. So I'm guessing, I mean, he might have sweet talked them, all 300 of them, into bed. I don't know. I might have a look and see what further information there is about the transcripts. So we've got spiritual challenges, what I call our fried egg. So this one, 8-8, is about adaptability to society, emotional intelligence, nurturing, sensitive, earth connection, grounding for others, clairvoyant, and that means being able to see into people. Now, this is interesting. People did flock to them, and they felt nurtured. They felt looked after. They would say that they'd been healed by this person. Now, if you think about what I said previously about being able to manipulate people when you can see almost into them, if you're intuitive, clairvoyant, etc., this one comes back now as if that was one of their gifts, and it appears in terms of just watching from a distance, seeing them on TV, etc. It appears that they did have that ability, and I'm sure people told them a lot as well, and then you can piece things together. If they had that ability and they were using it for ill-gotten reasons, you can start to see why, aside from the celebrity endorsements, you'd see why people really fell for it. Now, the possible challenges of the 8-8: highly sensitive, ungrounded, not in body, stuck in head, resistant to incarnation, in terms of people feel like they don't want to be here, they were born at the wrong time, or they don't feel like the earth is for them, escapist, over-analytical, commitment phobic, martyr complex, stuck in past issues, hold on to clutter. The thing that stands out to me in all of this is the whole thing about the martyr complex, because they were almost, people were looking to them as some kind of god. So that was a big part of the identity and the persona that they had put forward as well. So that was very interesting, just kind of reading this with hindsight. Let's go on to the 17-8, the spiritual talents. So potential attributes: great confidence, public speakers, media talents, unerring belief in cause, politician energy, capacity to teach. Now, this person, not only were they healing several thousand people every year, they were also, you know, teaching people aspects of that, etc. So this very much fits. They were a bit of a media darling, not necessarily because of what they were doing, but because of what the people around them were doing. But they then started, by virtue of that, wielding quite a lot of power. And they didn't speak English. Now, the interviews that I have seen, they had a translator. So because it wasn't in my mother tongue, maybe that the public speaking, the politician, the persuasiveness, etc., the charisma would not necessarily have translated. Just kind of, you watching this person, you can barely hear what they're saying because the sound was down a bit, but then you hear the person of a different gender just basically paraphrasing. However, for people in the mother tongue, I'm going to guess even more so, people would have been enamored by that. Now, the possible challenges for the 17-8 energy: lack of desire to relate, feelings of unworthiness, heavy repressed emotional baggage, held back from full expression, appears detached yet ungrounded, cut off, attracts subservient roles, emotional toxicity can manifest as mercury poisoning and feel unworthy to be a healing channel. Now, this is where we would get speculative, because as I said, I don't know what their background is. I have no idea what they were carrying in terms of emotional baggage. I've got no idea if what they did to these 300 women, they had any sense of remorse by that, felt any kind of emotion by that. If they did, yes, of course, there's going to be some emotional baggage. So this one, I would have to know more about the background of this person to kind of go, yeah, but just on the face of it again, you don't necessarily behave like that towards 300 women if you haven't got a little bit of internal stuff going on. So, and whether or not they felt unworthy to be a healing channel, I don't know. They always came across as quite humble, as, you know, this really was a gift that was bestowed on them, but it wasn't them, it's just traveling through them, etc. Whether that was unworthiness or just, as we used to say, just fronting, I don't know. So we've got our spiritual goals now, the 16, 7. And by the way, when we have the worldly, it's like, what are you, you know, from the age of 0 to 30/35, what are you here to do? You're getting to know yourself when we're in that worldly aspect. When we move into the spiritual, it doesn't mean you suddenly get more spiritual at the age of 30, 32, 35, whatever it is. It's an approximation. And of course, people are on different spiritual journeys and paths. So some will be quicker, some will be later. It doesn't mean you suddenly get more spiritual. It simply means that you've mastered, worked through, overcome some of the worldly things. You get to know yourself. You have a stronger sense of your identity. So think of it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once those basic things at the bottom of the pyramid, the triangle, are met, you then start moving into self-actualization. And it's a similar kind of idea with the soul plan. So when we're talking about spiritual, it doesn't mean suddenly like, ta-da, you're spiritual. So unless that's the area you choose to develop in. Anyway, so we've got the 16/7, and I haven't looked at that. I just created the soul plan. I have not looked at it. I'm just reading it in real time with you. So the 16/7 now, of course, what leaps out immediately is here to work with groups, very loving, open, positive, prudent, reliable, determined, comes across as real leadership abilities. Again, they could take those words and put them in the bio for this person, because that's very much about how they came across, very much about how they were built, how they were sold, how they were presented to the world. Possible challenges: hides the spirituality, presents a facade, lies, brackets by omission, negativity, constant karmic experiences, difficulty receiving, brackets love. Now, the thing that, of course, leaps out immediately when you've got someone putting themselves forward in the world as this wonderful healer, doing the work of God, and then it turns out they're a serial rapist and there's over 300, well, there's 300 women. It's like, well, that's got to be the biggest facade going, hasn't it? Now, lies by omission, it doesn't mean that the lies were coming out of their mouth. It means they're just not telling you certain things. And of course, we're seeing one thing presented on camera, but something entirely different is going on behind the scenes. Now, I'm going to come back to what they were imprisoned for. When you do that to 300 women, I'm guessing there's some stuff going on in terms of your ability to love and care and all the rest of it. And with regards to the spiritual, about hiding their spirituality, it's kind of almost the opposite in how it came about. They were putting themselves out as being highly spiritual, but there's this monstrous stuff going on behind the scenes. So for me, I don't read that necessarily as hiding their spirituality. It's like we're being presented with one thing, but the one thing we're seeing is a great, great big fat lie. And then we come to the soul destiny. So what is this person's life about? A culmination of all of these attributes that we've seen. So great desire to learn on the potential attributes, great love to share, mothering people, sees beauty in all, romantic, harmonious, successful. Yes, 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 yes. Again, all of that could have been on their bio, because my God, no pun intended, that's how they came across. They were there helping people, sharing their healing gifts, looking after people. Just wonderful. And of course, hugely successful. And after they were promoted, let's say, there's a very famous celebrity who flew over to where they do their work, this famous celebrity who had the world, who still has the world at their feet, did a treatment with them, a healing with them, was saying how amazing they were. They appeared on their show and they were already successful because it was like a cult following, and wow, their star just blew up, you know, in terms of the fame, etc. Now, possible challenges for the soul destiny: excessive, unbalanced approach, fear of failure, underachievers, self-guilt, lack of self-worth, need for approval, fanatical, sexual confusion, gall issues, gallbladder, anger or physical issue with liver or gallbladder. Now, when you've got this many women involved, again, it's an assumption, but oftentimes there is a level of anger that is coming out here in terms of how that is taken out on the victims. And 300 women is a lot of victims. Lack of self-worth, again, I've no idea. I would be speculating. But if they are not feeling good about themselves and they have all this dark stuff going on inside, there can be a level of guilt around that. There can be some self-worth issues around that. You then almost, it's a bit like if you know anything about the archetypes. You've got the pure, what I call the pure expression of the archetype, and then you've got the shadow side of the archetype. So the lover archetype, for example, sounds great. Who wouldn't want to be a great lover? Who wouldn't want to have great love in their life? The shadow side of the archetype. Let's see, if you've ever seen the film Dangerous Liaisons with Glenn Close and John Malkovich, that film, for me, when I'm teaching the archetypes, when I'm talking about the archetypes, I use that as a really great example of the shadow side, the dark side of the lover energy. It's cruel. It's destructive. It's, you know, it's evil. Again, it's a bit like there's some of the jester energy in that film as well, where you're making fun of people, you're getting your kicks at their expense, at their public humiliation, all of that. So although the lover and let's say the jester, because hey, who doesn't want to have fun and have a laugh? There's the pure expression of those, wonderful. And then there's a shadow side, or if we think of it in terms of Star Wars, the dark side. So that's what I mean here in terms of if there's that sort of darker energy going on, in the same way with Dangerous Liaisons, it comes out in a real kind of, you know, spewed, dark, evil, twisted way. The same can be true if there are things that you're expressing. And now we have in real time, it's 2024 at the moment, the 6th of November, time is flying. And there's a big case going on at the moment, and hearing about some of the ways that those involved, both male and female, have been treated. It's like, woo, it seems like there's some issues going on right there. And, you know, maybe some anger issues, some things that have been worked out and taken out on other people. And if there's a sense of anger with self, it doesn't always turn back on itself. It can turn outwards to other people in terms of how you feel. So now you can have a sense of power and control. And that plays out in terms of what you do to someone else. And geez, going through 300 women is a little bit fanatical, with a lot fanatical, and definitely some stuff going on there with sexual activities, expression, etc. So let me know in the comments who you think I am referring to. I'd be really interested to know. And yeah, and I might do you know, I can then do a maybe add-on video of this one. Once I put this one out, it'll be interesting just to see who people think I am talking about. And then I can maybe do a quick update and say, hey, this is the person that it was. But for now, I shall leave it there. And this soul plan reading was on what we call their birth name, because that's how we always start a soul plan. Even if someone's gotten married, you've changed your name by deed poll, you now call yourself Fifi Trixabel, fantastic. However, if you were born John Smith, Jackie Green, whatever it might be, then we always do the soul plan on the birth name, because that carries the original energy. You know, somebody gave you that name when you came into the world. And it's really interesting. Some of you might know a friend of mine, Sifu Boggy. we did a soul plan reading for him because, I did a few interviews with him, and then I used to come on to the show. He used to call me the questioner because he said, Marilyn, you always come up with such great questions. So I would be on the show not because I'm being interviewed, he's interviewing someone else, but I would be there to come up with the questions. So we get talking about various things, and he said, yeah, let's do an interview about the soul plan. And I said, do you want to do a soul plan live on air? And he's like, yeah, that'd be cool. So I said, send me your birth name. And then this is where it got interesting, because I didn't know, and it's not something he had really previously talked about. Of course, he's talked about it in public because the show is public. But it turns out that he was adopted. So he actually had 3 different sets of names: birth name, interim, and then adopted. And so I actually did the soul plan on all 3 of those. Now, if I were doing a soul plan session, soul plan reading, I would just do, with the first soul plan would always be on the birth name, the name on the birth certificate, even if that's no longer the name they use. And then there's something called an overlay name. So someone could do another soul plan reading, and that will be on whatever the name is, however they show up in the world. So let's just say, for example, someone's got 3 or 4 names. You've got your what we call your Christian name, you've got your surname, but you may have some middle names and interim names because everybody in the family wants someone wants to be named after gran, and someone needs to be named after granddad, and great uncle this and great aunt that. So you end up with like 4 or 5 names. But you present the world with your first name, your Christian name, as we say here in the UK, and your surname. So your soul plan would be on all of the 4 or 5 names that everybody wanted to get in and give you a part of the lineage. However, your overlay would be on your first name and your surname, because that's how you present in the world. And there's always, well, not always, often there's some overlap, as you would expect. But when I did Sifu's soul plan reading, even because it was childhood stuff we're talking about, with the original soul plan, even though he didn't in this current time resonate with the name on the original, that was the soul plan that he resonated with the most, and that spoke to his personality. And then, of course, as he grew and changed and nuanced, etc., the overlay soul plans that were then expressing elements of his personality as he grew, as he developed, and who he is in the present time. Really fascinating. It was on Facebook Live. I'm not sure if I might have the link somewhere if it's still up, etc. But it was really, really fascinating. So the soul plan I've just gone through, this is their birth name. This was a name that appeared on the legal case, etc. I might do another one. Maybe that's when I do the reveal. I might do another one on the name that they went by in the public domain, because I think it will be really, really fascinating to see what comes up, because their birth name that I'm looking at now on this soul plan is nothing like the name. And I guess they went for an English European translation. It's nothing like the name on their soul plan that I'm looking at now. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how that shapes up. Anyway, if you are still here, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Feel free to have a guess. Who am I talking about? And if you want any further information about the soul plans, I've been a soul plan reader since it's my anniversary. Because it's November. Since November 2013. I'm also a soul plan teacher, trainer. So if you want to learn how to be a soul plan reader, so you can add that to your repertoire, another string to your bow. You don't have to be a therapist to be a soul plan reader. A lot of soul plan readers are, but you might just think it's an interesting skill to have in and of its own right. So I also run soul plan workshops. Those are 3 days. But if you want any further information on doing a soul plan reading, I do those online. I've been doing online coaching, online training, and online therapy since 2005. So many years before the old pandemic pivot, everybody's online, etc. And some of you who know a little bit more about my background, I've been a specialist remote working implementation consultant since 2003. So, 21 years now. And that means going into organizations to design and write and implement flexible and remote working policy and strategy. And back in the day, most people didn't have laptops or mobile phones, and that's how long ago I've been doing all the remote stuff. So I've been doing, I do the soul plan readings online, so you can be anywhere in the world. You receive a copy of your soul plan report, so that's what we're looking at now, and you have the information about the soul plans, etc. And then you get a recording of that, an audio recording, because when we do the full reading, it's a lot of information and a lot of data. So what I don't want is people sitting there having to sort of scribble notes. So I just do an audio recording. So you receive the soul plan report as a PDF, you receive the audio recording, and of course we do the soul plan reading one-to-one. So we go into more detail about what these little signs and squiggles mean, and the elements of the soul plan that stand out. And also, most importantly, because I've just gone through all of this in isolation, worldly goals, worldly targets, but when we're doing a soul plan reading, we look at the interconnection of that, because the soul plans always tell a story. Now, many of my clients have said it's like seeing their whole life laid out on 4 or 5 sheets of paper. One of my clients, who was in her mid-50s, she said, "Thank you, Marilyn, for explaining my entire life to me," because people recognize themselves as we go through their soul plan, and oftentimes it answers questions or it explains something that seemed a bit weird. Because I might say, I don't know, because there are specific self-help methods that are suggested with each of the aspects of the soul plan. There are 22 different aspects of the soul plan in total. So there are specific self-help therapies that are suggested. Self-help means it doesn't really cost you anything. You might buy a book or something like that, but things you can do for free. Then there are specific therapies that are suggested. There are also very specific limiting beliefs with each of the 22 aspects of the soul plan. And there are also back flower remedies that are recommended for people who are into that as well. So it's really detailed when you drill down into it. So I might say something like, in terms of self-help, something someone might want to look into, or something therapeutic. I might say, psychic art is coming up. I'm going to say 8 times out of 10, there's a moment of silence, and then the person goes, "Oh, I've just signed up for a psychic art class," or "I've just completed a psychic art class," or "I've been thinking about doing a psychic art." And I say, and it could be something that sounds completely random, but the person will go, "Oh my God, I've just done that, I'm doing that," or "I've been thinking of doing that," or "I've been drawn to doing that." So it's really uncanny. And then it kind of freaks people out, because they're like, "Well, hold on. How can these pieces of paper and these words on this piece of paper, how are they able to highlight what's been going on?" And I know for me, when I first saw my soul plan, I jokingly said, I wish I'd seen this like 20 years ago, because it would have saved me a lot of angst, because it was like seeing my whole life. For me, it talked about, oh my God, self-loathing, the suicidal tendencies, the denial of spirituality. Seriously, it was like, and when I say that to people now, they know what I do. I'm trained in about 20 different modalities. Started off with NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, HUNA, HUNA, went out to Hawaii a few times to study HUNA. I was so blown away with it. And then added things like past life regression, tarot. Tarot I first came across in the late 1990s, 1997, 98, but really then started doing tarot readings once I got into this. Things like FLP, future life progression, access consciousness, of course, the photo reading, accelerated learning, emo trance, EFT, energetic NLP, you name it, I've probably done it, DNA theta healing. I started off early days also with Reiki. So I'm trained in about 20 different modalities. Of course, I'm a coach and a therapist, etc. So when you hear me say denial of spirituality, lack of expression, people go, "Well, that's not you." I'm like, no, let me stop you right there. It was me right up until the age of 32. And 30 to 35 is that turning point in the soul plan. So when I read my soul plan, it described everything I'd been through to a T. It even talked about lack of expression, issues with the throat. I ended up with a thyroid problem. It was just like, get out of here. And then it described what because I was studying to be a chartered accountant before I I'm also, you know, hypnotherapist and coach, etc., NLP trainer. I was studying to be a chartered accountant. That's how much I didn't want to talk to people. And then it talked about, in the flip side, with the, you know, potential attributes, being a teacher, a speaker, a therapist, having many spiritual talents, the gift of oration. Seriously, and then when you read part 2 of my soul plan, I was like, well, that's totally what I'm doing. But I started doing that in October 2000. I didn't see my soul plan until 2013. So it was like, it sort of took my breath away. It's like, holy moly, mother of souls. This is my entire life. So it's always fascinating. And sometimes I send people the report and they just look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. When we do the reading, blows their mind. It's just so brilliant. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. If you want to check out the website, it's www.transformationstm.com. That's TRANCE, F for Freddie, FORMATIONS, TM as in trademark. So transformationstm.com/soul plan reading. Or if you look at the tabs along the top, oh gosh, it hasn't got its own tab actually. I think it's under coaching or something like that. It's been a while since I looked at my own website. I've had the website since 2001, so it's been around for a while. Actually, let me just have a little look-see so I don't mess you about. What we got here. Oh yeah, it has. Duh. Oh yeah, of course I updated it a few years ago. So you've got, when you land on the website, transformationstm.com, it says photo reading, then you've got a tab that says archetypes and soul plans. So you click on that one and then there's a drop down menu. But if you click soul plan and soul transformation integration, you'll find all of the information about the soul plan readings. And you can also book a soul plan reading as well. I have got a free soul plan room where you can go in. I put a demo soul plan in there so you can read through a soul plan report. There's an interview that I did with Colourful Radio a few years ago. I've put because the presenter, Lisa Bent, was fascinated by the idea of soul plan. So she's asking the questions that you would ask if you've never come across it before, haven't used it. So it's a really fascinating interview. So what I'll do is I'll add the link to the soul plan room in the description of this video or in the comments on social media. Just make up a nickname, choose an avatar. You don't have to sign in. There's no email, there's no cookies following you around or anything like that. So you can go in, just have a look around, watch the interviews, read the soul plan report. And there's also a link to the website in there as well. Alrighty, I shall leave it there. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. If you want to have a soul plan reading or you'd like to buy one as a gift for someone else, or you know someone who could benefit, please feel free to share the links and info with them. Wishing you all a fabulous, beautiful, wonderful, love-filled day. Marilyn Devonish, the Neuro Success Coach and Rapid Transformation Specialist, over and out. Catch you later.